Good morning. Welcome to this presentation on implementing a successful dropship model. My name is Steve Rees. I work in the product management team at TrueCommerce. I'm joined today by Steve Richards from GS1 UK. So we've got a fairly straightforward agenda for the next 30 minutes or so. We're going to talk about the what, why, and how of dropship. And talk just a little bit about TrueCommerce and a little bit about GS1. So in terms of questions, if you have questions as you're going through, we'd like you to use the question facility built into the webinar software. So you can see on your control panel a link saying questions. If you could enter any questions you have there, we'll pick them up at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. So I thought I'd start with a definition of dropship, and I did consider whether this was necessary because I'm sure the listener knows exactly what dropship is, but just to make sure that we're all in the right virtual meeting, I'll offer this up as a definition. So dropship is a customer service model where retailers sell products to their customers, but they have an arrangement with the suppliers of those products to deliver direct to the consumer. So the retailer is responsible for customer service, for after-sales service, for payment methods, etc. And the supplier is responsible for storing those products in his warehouse, picking, packing, and delivering them. And in this context, the supplier might be a distributor, it might be a wholesaler, or it might actually be the manufacturer of those products. And often the sale, the initial purchase by the consumer takes place through the retailer's website or web shop, but it could be through a marketplace, an online marketplace used by the retailer. But it could be an in-store order. I could walk into a physical store, order something that's not in stock, and get that. The retailer may choose to deliver that to me via a dropship model. I could order things through a paper catalog or through a TV channel, through a call center. And any of those kind of order capture methods are kind of independent of the model used to deliver the goods. So that's my definition, so that's what we'll kind of be working from. Now, I really didn't want my second slide to be about TrueCommerce. If you want to know about TrueCommerce, we've got a website with lots of material on, but just to give some context to the conversation, TrueCommerce offer a service that manages the assured delivery of transactional documents between buyers and suppliers, and delivering those transactional documents in a format that's useful to the recipient. Now, that's a really long-winded way of saying that retailers send orders to us in their preferred format. So they might generate them from their SAP system or their Microsoft system, or they might use an EDI format or XML format, whatever format they want to publish orders in. We take those and then we convert those orders into the format required by each supplier that needs to fulfill them. So, you know, as an example, we might have SAP orders coming in, but the orders going out might be Sage format for one supplier and Navision format for another supplier, or even the ability for suppliers to use the portal to view those orders. And I use orders as an example, but it's any transactional document at all. So many of you would have heard the term EDI, I'm sure. So TrueCommerce is a next generation EDI company. And typically, or certainly historically, most of the transactional documents have been generated and consumed by the retailers' systems and the supplier systems, so the ERP systems, the finance systems. But increasingly, TrueCommerce are able to offer hosted shared applications that help retailers and suppliers actually make more of the data that's being exchanged. And we may touch on that later in the conversation. So in my role as product manager, the best part of my role as product manager is I get to meet lots and lots of different businesses, and increasingly the topic of dropship or direct delivery comes up actually more and more frequently. And when I talk to customers that are either planning to extend their dropship model or use dropship for the first time, the first question I ask is what are you trying to achieve? What are you going to be doing? And I guess the answers fall into kind of three different categories. The first one is kind of real simple. It's, I guess, the most obvious one is it's a way for retailers to offer their customers a wider range of products without increasing their physical infrastructure or the inventory costs. So that's kind of the most common answer, I guess. But also there's a couple of other kind of minor benefits or less frequently stated benefits, I guess. And one of those is to remove the need to manage unsold products. You know, fashions go out of fashion, technology products become obsolete. And one of the benefits of a dropship model to the retailer is the retailer doesn't actually buy products until he sold them. He gets the order from the customers first, and he generates a purchase order on the supplier on the back of that. So the risk of having a stockroom full of clothing that they can't sell, or obsolete mobile phones they can't sell, is reduced. And then the final one is to do with costs. And I'll use an example of kind of bulky goods, but it applies to in lots of examples. So if I sell sofas are pretty big. Is there value in the supplier shipping a truckload of sofas for me to store in my warehouse to later ship them on individually to my customers? Is there benefit to moving those goods twice, or is it a better process to store them at the suppliers and make that movement cost once? So just going back quickly to the offering a wider range of products, because there's kind of quite a bit of subtlety there. Some online retailers see themselves as an online department store with an endless number of departments and an endless number of products in each of those departments. And in many cases, kind of the more products, the better there. It's really about volume. But other retailers see themselves as a one-stop shop for a particular market. And there are many examples of these. It might be a web store that does everything for someone who wants to run a school or college, or it might be a sporting goods website. And I guess the thing with a one-stop shop is you better be a one-stop shop if that's what you're aiming to do. And what I mean by that is you have to storing the products that sell in great quantities for fast-moving products. You need to also cater for the products that are sold less frequently. And maybe those products that are sold less frequently, it's best to use the direct delivery or dropship model for those. And I guess the reason for the one-stop shop thing is pretty obvious, but if I want to buy a running shirt and some running shoes and some running headphones, I'm much more likely to buy that from the online retailer that can provide all three things. If I've got to go different places to buy those products, those people are going to lose out. I'm going to buy from a one-stop shop. And then just kind of one final example on this slide. Offer a wider range of products doesn't necessarily mean a wider range. I know that's contradictory, but if I sell clothing, I might want to offer a particular shirt in 10 sizes and 10 colors rather than 5 sizes and 5 colors. So just give my customer more choice. And again, you know, a way to do that may be that I fulfill orders for the most common sizes and colors from my own warehouse, but I ask my suppliers to use a dropship model for the less frequently bought products. So that's just some of the comments and conversations I've had with customers as I've kind of met people in the US and Europe discussing dropship. So the second question I ask is, okay, what's the most important thing to you? And the answer is pretty consistent. The answer is pretty much that the retailer wants the customer to receive the same customer experience, the same level of service for products that are drop shipped as for products that they ship themselves. As a consumer, I shouldn't get a lower quality of service or a different type of service because of the delivery model. So often, well, almost always, that's the most important thing, and that's actually the challenge. That's the difficult thing. That's the problem that has to be solved with dropship implementations, because on the one hand you need control of that customer experience, but on the other hand you're outsourcing a large part of that to other businesses, to your suppliers, and it's actually more complex than a traditional outsourcing model, because you're outsourcing those steps of the process to hundreds, maybe thousands of suppliers. So how do you do that? And I guess that's a short question and there's a long answer, and we'll explore some of that a little bit more during the next 10 or 15 minutes. But for me, the starting point is always to look at the processes that touch the customer. Okay, so what bits of the steps from taking the order, managing that order, allocating the stock, shipping, which bits of that process affect the customer? And then you design shared processes across the retailer's business and across the supplier's business to have a consistent approach to customer service. And supporting those processes, typically you'll need to exchange data in a structured format on a regular basis. So the short answer is design a process and across the organizations and use shared platforms and shared data to implement that. So I just want to kind of explore that in a little bit more detail. And I've just picked some of the steps that potentially affect customer service. And there'll be others, and then there's different things that are important to different businesses. But I'm going to start with product information. So in terms of product information, this isn't just an issue for dropship products. It's for all products that are sold through a web shop. And if I try to explain what I mean by that, if you have high quality, accurate product information, so product attributes, sizes, colors, power settings, all of those different things. If you have good attributes and good descriptions, that lets you do a couple of things. Firstly, it lets your customers easily find the products that they're looking for, so that the products that meet their buying criteria. And then the descriptions and the images, etc., the detail behind that allows the customer to make sure that they're buying what they really want to buy. They're not going to buy the wrong thing and have to return it. So the quality of the product information allows potentially an increase in sales, but also helps to decrease the number of returns. And the challenge with that is, as you grow the number of products and the number of suppliers you work with, maintaining that catalog becomes increasingly difficult. I guess the key to that is very often the suppliers will know more about the products than the retailer. So there needs to be kind of a joint process to define those products. And as I say, as the number of suppliers and products increase, the processes that you have in place to manage that may not scale in the dropship model. So that's kind of product catalog information. The other aspect is the stock status. Now, if I have a web shop and I'm shipping all of the goods from my own warehouse, it's much easier for me to get a view of what's in stock and what's not in stock, what's about to run out, and I can use that knowledge, that information about stock status, to really make sure the customer has the right experience. So what I might want to do is, if an item isn't in stock anymore, I might just want to take it off the website. I might want to be able to allow it still to be ordered, but put a date on. This product will not be shipped till the end of the month. I might want to be able to offer an alternative product. But either way, I avoid that situation where the customer buys something, selects the next day option, and then you've got to contact them and say it isn't in stock, and to refund the credit card and all those processes. So really I want to avoid that. And as you can imagine, when I'm using a dropship model, I don't have necessarily the same access to stock information as I do if I'm shipping stuff from my own warehouse. And again, it's really about sharing information, making it easy for the supplier to send you the latest stock information on a regular basis, and actually using that as part of the process. Similarly, order status is pretty important to people. People have high expectations when they buy from a web shop. When they click the buy button, they expect to get an email pretty much immediately saying, "Thank you for your order. We're going to ship it on this date." When it gets shipped, they expect another notification. If there are any problems with that order, if the delivery is going to be delayed, then they expect a notification pretty quickly. And again, if that information isn't in your business system, if it's not in the retailer's business systems, you're again relying on the supplier to tell you that he's received the order. He can definitely ship it on the date. And similarly, you need a process to manage changes instigated by the customer. They may want to cancel or move delivery dates, and also changes by the supplier. He may discover that he can actually fulfill that order. And so that kind of regular managed exchange of status information is pretty critical to a dropship program. And just to, I guess, to ram that home, if I have a problem with an order and I phone the retailer's call center, I expect them to know everything about my order. I don't expect them to say, oh, I can't tell you that because the supplier is sending that to you. So again, joined up processes and shared data. So just on to my final thing I just want to touch on is the shipping process. In the old days, shipping used to be a fairly simple process. Before we had kind of online retail, you'd go down the post office, you'd buy a postal order, you'd put it in an envelope, and sometime later the things you bought would turn up in the post. But now, shipping, the choices are, do you want it next day? Do you want it in 3 days? Do you want a 7-day service? Do you want it delivered to your home? Do you want it delivered to a pickup point, a locker? And all that information is offered, all those choices are offered to the customer as part of the buying experience. And again, if you're kind of asking your suppliers to perform the shipping for you, you need to give the suppliers the information and the tools to make sure they select the right carrier, to help them print the carrier labels, to help them print branded packing slips, so retailer branded packing slips, so it looks like the parcel has come from the retailer, not from a small supplier. And of course, when it gets shipped, people want to know the tracking reference so they can follow it. So again, the supplier's doing things on behalf of the retailer, but those processes have to be integrated, again, through shared applications and shared data. So I'm just going to go back to a slide I put up a couple of slides back, and just make sure I kind of at least have a go at answering the question that we posed at the start of this presentation, which I think was something like how to implement a successful dropship program. And that's a big question, and really to explore that, you need to be in front of people. But for me, a dropship project is like any other business project. You start off with a clear business objective, what exactly you're trying to achieve. Then you understand the requirements that help you meet that objective. So the specific things, the specific process steps that you need to achieve that objective. And then you need to design an end-to-end process to meet those requirements and achieve your objective. And remembering that that process design doesn't stop within the retailer organization. It extends to include the supplier's processes as well. You have to have an achievable plan. You have to take supplier onboarding seriously. If you want 1,000 suppliers to do this, you need a process to get those up and running very, very quickly. And then I think you need to select the right applications, the right data exchange, the right alerts, etc., to more automate that process as much as you can. And again, like any other project or any other process, continually measure, review, and improve. So, I haven't specifically answered, the drop ship aspect of that, but as I say, to me, it's like any other project, that's how you do it. So I've got one more slide, I think. Yeah, this is my final slide. So I think I said earlier on that TrueCommerce is a next generation EDI service. And I also said that we have hosted applications, shared applications that allow retailers to work with suppliers in a collaborative way. So in the bottom here, I've got a digital commerce application. Included in the digital commerce application is a sophisticated collaborative product management tool. So that lets your suppliers define some product attributes. It lets the retailer define some product attributes, and then there's an approval process to publish that product to your web store. There's a supplier enablement piece over on the right-hand side of the slide. And the supplier enablement piece, that's the bit that manages the exchange of data between retailers and suppliers and converts it to useful formats. But it also includes a web portal to allow smaller suppliers to view orders, acknowledge orders, ship them, etc. As part of that, we have a fulfillment module that allows suppliers to select the right carrier to meet the required level of service, but also to print the shipping labels for that carrier, to print the packet lists relevant to that retailer. And then, of course, there's a couple more, sorry. We have an inventory management module for collaborative planning. We talked earlier about how important it is to have a view of the stock information. That helps you do it. And I guess finally, we talked about measurement. You know, just because you're outsourcing part of this project doesn't mean you have to take responsibility for it. So one of the things people want to do is measure the performance of the suppliers. You know, when do they acknowledge the orders? When did they ship them, etc. And our analytics tools will help do that. So that was a very quick view of the TrueCommerce applications that can help in a dropship environment. I guess the final thing I'd like to say is, and I said this earlier, most enjoyable part of my role is to visit different businesses, talk about what they're doing, how the world is changing. So if anyone listening has a dropship project they're starting or extending, and they'd like to talk about this a little bit more, I'd be happy to come visit you. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Steve from GS1 to talk a little bit about GS1.
Okay, good morning, everyone. GS1 is a global standards organisation with a presence in 150 countries. We're neutral and not for profit, so governed by our members and support initiatives required by the industry. I guess we're perhaps best known for the barcodes that are scanned at point of sale. A lot of members join GS1 for that reason, but many are also involved in the collaborative groups that we facilitate. And they work together to develop common ways of working that benefit the respective sectors. We also partner with companies like TrueCommerce who offer supply chain solutions that use GS1 standards. All of our partners are accredited and demonstrate a high level of knowledge in the standard of GS1 standards and work with us to maintain that knowledge. In the UK, GS1 have around 31,000 members across a number of sectors. The majority are very small businesses and classed as SMEs, and many of these have joined in recent years in order to trade successfully online. In the UK, the main sectors we support or are supporting through our standards are retail for grocery and apparel, the health service, and as mentioned, the fast-growing marketplaces that we all use. GS1 support is built very much on 4 pillars: identify, capture, use, and share. So you can use GS1 identification keys to help you uniquely identify everything from products and services to locations and shipments. You can capture data through our industry standard barcodes or RFID tags, and these encode identification numbers and data like expiry dates, batch numbers, and quantities. Trading partners share our communication standards, such as EDI, which allow product information to flow through the supply chain from the point of production through to the end customer or even patient. And lastly, our standards can be used throughout the supply chain to drive efficiency and value. And here you can see some key GS1 standards that will be used within the dropship model. Probably the most important is the GTIN, or the Global Trade Item Number. These are used to uniquely identify all trade items at any point in the supply chain. It's the number under a barcode, and dropship suppliers will use these in a 13-digit format to identify the consumer unit, and there's a 14-digit number to identify the traded unit or the case. GTIN is also used in electronic messages such as purchase orders and invoices, so it'll be a key part of dropship. Once the retailer has received the customer order, the EDI orders and invoices that the retailer and supplier will subsequently exchange are supported by the industry-agreed GS1 standards. And that's it in terms of a very brief overview of you know, who GS1 are and how we partner with organisations like TrueCommerce.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So I'm just going to see, do we have any questions? Just give me a second. Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. So I think the first one is for GS1. So the question, Steve, is I hear about a lot of different EDI standards, including TradeComms, Edifact, XML, and EANCOM. Are these all GS1 standards, and which one should I be using? Would you like to take that question?
Yeah, well, I mean, the only supported GS1 EDI standards are GS1 XML and EANCOM. TradeComms, that many listeners may have heard about, is a very old standard now, and GS1 have not supported that since the 90s, and it's only really used for domestic trade in the UK. Edifact also is not a GS1 standard, so I guess everyone should always be looking at implementing EANCOM and GS1 XML, particularly certainly if you want a GS1 compliant solution.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So I've got another question here. Does the TrueCommerce solution enable me to include all of my suppliers, even if they are very small with limited IT resource? So I think I'll take that one. So yeah, I guess the interesting thing about dropship is that you potentially extend your supplier base to such an extent that you're now including maybe smaller suppliers for the first time. And those suppliers won't necessarily have sophisticated IT systems, but they may have products that you want to sell to fulfill that one-stop shop type model. So really you need to be looking for a platform that accommodates the really big suppliers that can do that message exchange, and smaller suppliers who will need to use a portal to view orders and create shipments. And really the ideal platform will be a single platform that allows both, and ideally it should be interchangeable. So what I mean by that, we have many suppliers who will use integrated messaging to receive orders and to send out invoices, but they'll use our web portal to create the shipping labels, to create the packing slips, etc. So that's something that needs to be considered. And also, it's not necessarily about big suppliers and small suppliers. I might be a kind of mid-sized supplier, but because I'm shipping one of those edge products for you, one of those kind of low volume sales to your website, I might not want to go through and spend time and effort integrating your system with mine. I might want to do all that through a web portal. So yeah, it's a good question. You need to consider a wide range of supply requirements. Okay, let's see if we've got any more. Have we got? I think we've got time for one more question. So this is a question related to GS1 standards and product identification. So Steve, the question is, why do we need GS1 standards to identify our products for dropship? I've got an internal system that can generate company-specific identification numbers. Does that question make sense to you?
Yeah, well, I think proprietary numbering that's system generated is fine. I guess if you're working a closed, localized environment, so not looking at trade or accessing in the external supply chain, it's not suitable if you wish to trade and need a guaranteed unique number that's associated with a specific product or a group of products. The point to make is all the GS1 numbers are unique, interoperable, and recognised in any country, and policed by all of our organisations globally as well. So, I guess an example is if you're selling a can of Coke, for instance, it'll only be recognised through the supply chain as a can of Coke, and not as something else, which is a common problem that our support teams have to overcome on a daily basis.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Actually, we've had a couple of questions come in while Steve was talking, so I'll just do one more if that's okay. And this question is, how will the drop shipping model work alongside our direct-to-store or ship-to distribution center model? And again, this will vary among retailers. It may be that the same supplier will be required to ship some goods to a physical store, some goods to a distribution center, and some goods direct to consumer. And it may be that you have to implement 3 different systems for those 3 different models. Of course, the ideal is to have a single platform that allows the supplier to interact with a single platform to fulfill all 3 of those models. And again, you know, there's levels of complexity here. It may be that for a single product, my most frequent fulfillment model is to fulfill it from a warehouse, but maybe at peak times I ask the supplier to do it. So there's kind of lots of different models that kind of mix and match, and you'll get the most out of the integration across your supply chain if you can select a single platform that does all of those things. So I think that's all we have time for. As I say, I'd love to meet anybody out there who's starting a dropship project or extending a dropship project. It'll be easy for you to find my contact details. So just to close, I'd like to thank Steve from GS1 and thank everyone for joining us this morning. Thank you.